So, in a natural orchestra, there are often times when a certain section, violins, violas, or cellos, may need to play multiple notes at the same time. Since there are a fixed number of players in the group, they generally have to divide the notes up between them, which is known as divisi. If in a string library, for example, you have 20 violin players, if you played multiple notes, the violins could overpower the other sections, and this is not the case in a real orchestra. Fortunately, many string libraries have a setup to automatically divide the number of notes being played by the number of players, and this is known as the Divisi feature. Here's a short piece with basses and cello parts being played, and I want to play a tremolo violin part that uses more than one note at a time over top of it. Right now, I don't have Divisi enabled, so if I play a part on top, it's actually stacking 30 violins playing one note on top of another 30 playing a second one. Let's listen. Of course, you can use dynamics or volume automation to bring the level down, but it's quicker and more realistic to enable Divisi on the instrument so that the instruments retain their relative volume. Now, please take a listen with the notes being divided using the Divisi feature. I just enable it right here. I'm sure you noticed that the balance between the violins and the other instruments was much more even that time. The way it works is if the section is 30 violins and you want to play 4 different notes, it divides the number in the section and plays 7 or 8 players for each note. Since the first passage for the tremolo violins was just single notes, it was using all 30 players, but then for the second half, when there were more notes being played, it was actually dividing those amongst the other players. And the best part of the feature is that it's not something you really have to think about because it automatically does the work for you. This can come in handy when you want to write, for example, for a pop or rock song where the orchestral strings are not really the center of the piece, they're just kind of a background thing, and you don't want to have to go in and do each individual section at a time. You can usually select a patch such as the string ensemble patch and just play the notes you want to hear, and the plugin will automatically have certain instruments play the notes that are in their range. Here's an example. So that part took me about 15 seconds to record, if that. If I had had to do it with different instruments, it probably would have taken me, 2 to 5 minutes to even come up with the different parts. And the thing is, if you do actually decide that you want to separate it into the separate sections like the violin, viola, cello, and bass, you can always take those MIDI notes that you played now and just make sure that the ones that are in specific ranges go to those instruments. It's also kind of layering some of the transitions between the different note ranges, so it does have a little more of a cohesive sound in certain ways. Now, if you are doing a fully blown orchestral piece, I would always say go in and do the separate sections, but it is nice to have an option that lets you actually produce and record much quicker. Many different types of music, such as pop, rock, hip hop, may not necessarily need individual instrumentation, and this is just an easier way to accomplish creating that part quickly. And that's Divisi in a nutshell. Please stay tuned for the next video.